Welcome back to the Dead Science Society podcast. And if you haven't been here before, my name's James Watson, and this is the podcast where I invite my fellow scientists from their graves to discuss their discoveries. Today I have with me some of the most important scientists from the 1950s and 60s. Welcome Rosalind Franklin,
Excuse me.
Murray Gell-Mann, and Marshall Nierenberg. First up, we have Murray Gell-Mann. Tell us, how did you come to win a Nobel Prize?
Obviously, I'm the most brilliant scientist here. Being the oldest of the four, I was born in September 1929 in Manhattan, New York. I actually went to a good college, which was Yale University, at just the age of 15 just to get a bachelor's degree, and MIT for my master's. You, however, cannot possibly be able to achieve that.
Ooh, we got a child genius over here.
My work was the utmost importance. It requires the fundamental basis for atoms, the very reason we exist and all of what we are made of. Quarks, to simplify for you to understand, quarks are the building blocks of protons and neutrons. I discovered the quantum property of what keeps the atomic nucleus together beginning at the University of Chicago in 1952. In 1961, I worked with Yang Niemann to find out more fundamental particles. Quarks also contributed to my discovery of the omega minus particles. I won the Nobel Peace Prize in Physics because of my deeds.
You mean a Nobel Prize, because we actually get things done.
Oh, okay. Nobel Prize. Then I became director of the MacArthur Foundation for 23 years, from 1979 to 2002, and the President Committee of Advisors on Science and Technology because of what I achieved. It was a good, 1969 was a good year. I went through hell to get my Nobel Prize.
I'm sure you went there too.
I get it, we're dead.
That's a great segue actually into our next guest, Marshall Nierenberg.
Well, I was born on April 10th, 1927 in New York City. My parents moved to Orlando, Florida when I was a child, so I grew up there. I then went to the University of Florida to get my bachelor's degree in zoology and chemistry. To continue my education, I completed my master's in zoology and went to the University of Michigan to complete my PhD. I then did a 2-year postdoctoral fellowship with the American Cancer Society in Maryland. That's where I did most of my research and findings to get my Nobel Prize. So now you may be asking, what did I actually discover? I cracked a genetic code which is erased and sewed to decipher the codons of messenger RNA for all 20 amino acids. I found this by matching amino acids to synthetic triplet nucleotides. Not only that, but I also found that there is redundancy in that some amino acids are encoded by more than one codon, and some codons are quote-unquote punctuation marks in the mRNA message. In 1961, I worked with J.H. Matei to publish a paper that showed that a synthetic messenger RNA made of only uracils can direct protein synthesis. In 1964, I won the National Medal of Science for studies of the genetic control of protein synthesis and for deciphering the chemical code relating nucleic acid structures of protein structures. And finally, in 1968, I won a Nobel Prize with my fellow scientists Hargobind Khorana and Robert Holley.
Yeah, but how do your findings help anything?
My findings on mRNA allow for things like vaccines to work. With the whole COVID issue, you all should be glad that I discovered mRNA so you can have some immunity to the disease. I also give you immunity to the flu and other life-threatening viruses through vaccines. But enough about the future. I'd like to know more about our host.
Well, since you insist. I was actually born in Chicago, Illinois on April 6, 1928. I grew up there until I went to the University of Chicago to get my bachelor's degree in zoology in 1947, and then went on to get my PhD in zoology at Indiana University in 1950. 3 years later, Francis Crick, my partner, and I made our discovery of the double helix, which, for those of you who don't know, is the twisted ladder structure of DNA. DNA at this time was thought to be a simple and uniform structure, which confused many scientists as to how such a simple thing could form complex organisms. So we took it upon ourselves to find the actual structure of DNA. Our discovery actually yielded insights into the genetic code and protein synthesis. It also helped produce recombinant DNA research, genetic engineering, rapid gene sequencing, and monoclonal antibodies, which are powerful scientific techniques in the biotechnology industry. It also inspired genetic fingerprinting, modern forensics, mapping of the human genome, and gene therapy. So, as you can all see for yourselves, our discovery has changed the face of biology. I even got a Nobel Prize for it.
Would you like to tell us how you did the experiment?
I myself did not conduct any experiments, but rather used the experimental results of others in the fields of genetics, biochemistry, chemistry, physical chemistry, and X-ray crystallography, and put the pieces together and found that DNA is actually more complex with proteins.
Yeah, you stole my research and claimed it to be your own.
Yeah, so I'm the one with the Nobel Prize, aren't I? Moving on, if you would like to jump off the podcast now, is the time, as we saved the worst for last. Rosalind Franklin?
You think you're a 10? On the pH scale, maybe, because you're bloody basic.
Anyways, and why did your discovery matter, or was it just as insignificant as your life?
Oh, don't get all narky now. You used my discovery to get that Nobel Prize.
Guys, let's calm down. So, Rosalind, continue.
Thank you, kind sir. Before I was so rudely interrupted, I was explaining that I was born in Notting Hill, London on July 25th, 1920, and I have a PhD in physical chemistry from Cambridge University. I conducted my experiments at a crystallography laboratory, and my research was an actual contribution which solved the mystery of the structure of DNA. I took X-ray photographs from the molecule, which showed 2 strands of DNA wrapped in a double helix. There are different forms of DNA. The B form is the famous photograph 51 that shows the new discovery. I later got ovarian cancer. Could somebody help me out, please?
Ovarian cancer?
Thank you. Where for the next 2 years of my life, I continued to work until I eventually croaked on April 16th, 1958. Much like how this codger's laugh sounds to my right.
You know what? I think it's time to finish the podcast.
But I'm not finished.
Anyways, I think it's time for the joke of the day.
What's the joke of the day?
You.
I'm glad you asked. Every episode, we read out a joke sent in by our lovely listeners. Today's joke is, why did the biologists and physicists break up?
I don't know. Tell us.
Because they have no chemistry.
That's a good one.
It is. Thank you to Ford Dead Peep 2004 for the comment. Stay tuned till next time for our next awesome joke, and thank you to our lovely guest for joining me this evening.
The pleasure is all mine.
No problem.
This was terrible.
And have a great evening, except you, Rosalind.